Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Stormkeep. My name is Paul, and today I'm joined by...
Luis Mendoza. Hey, everybody.
Pleasure to have you on board, Luis. Or is it Luis?
Thank
Luis,
you, Paul.
Luis?
Luis.
Luis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Luis is fine. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Before we start the video, I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Mindtaker Minis, a community-focused shop in Vancouver, Washington. They provide space for local clubs and groups for wargaming and RPGs alike. They carry modeling supplies, terrain, dice, and have a sizable collection of 40k, Age of Sigmar, and Warhammer Fantasy in stock. In addition to reselling Warhammer, they will also buy your unused miniatures. If you've got a big pile of shame in the closet, you can turn it into cash or trade it in for store credit. Visit mindtaker.org and use code STORMKEEP5 to get 5% off your next online order. Thank you to Mindtaker Minis for sponsoring this episode, and now on to the show. So today we are going to do a short video about the Knight-Judicator, because this is a unit that has become very interesting in our upcoming Battletome re-review when we were looking at all the different units that are in our book with all the Legends units removed and all the new rules for the new season. We just took a complete fresh look at the book, everything from scratch, trying to drop all our preconceived notions. And one of the units that really stood out to us in this new review is the Knight-Judicator. Today we're going to talk about the Knight-Judicator because the Knight-Judicator is a unit that has really surprised us. We did a complete look at our Battletome again now that all the Legends units have been removed. We have way lower point costs pretty much across the board. Almost everything is cheaper in our army compared to last year. And there's new seasonal rules that really shift up how we are going to be approaching battles, how we're going to be doing battle tactics. And one of the units that really surprised us with how useful they've become is the Knight-Judicator. Now, I was very surprised at how good this guy became. Luis, what do you think about the Knight-Judicator in this season compared to last season?
In this season, I see to Knight-Judicator covering the gap that we have for shooting units. So I see a big advantage before in comparison with the last season, because now we need more shooting units. And this guy, in comparison with the Longstrikes, is offering a quite similar profile with a lower cost of points.
Yeah, and that cost is really interesting because instead of having to pay 200 points for Longstrikes and then 400 if you want 2 units of Longstrikes, you can kind of go a bit more modular. You can say, well, okay, I want 130 points of shooting, or I want 260 points, or I want 390 points. You don't have to do a flat 200, 400. You can do something in between. You can just have 260 points, and that can really help fill the gap in your list. You know, there's a lot of times where I'm at 1970 points and I've got Longstrikes in my list, and I'm thinking, oh man, I really could have taken Judicators instead, and these points would just look a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Besides, this is hero, so it's opening another kind of situation and condition that could be usable in the time that we are learning how to use it in the new list.
Yeah, being a hero is very interesting. That's the biggest difference between the Knight-Judicator and the Longstrikes is the hero keyword. And we're not used to having heroes that are there primarily to do damage. Some other armies do this, but Stormcast typically, our heroes don't do that much damage. They're either wizards and priests and they kind of don't do anything, or they're just inefficient like Celestant Prime or the big dragon Karazai. Like they do damage, but they're not, a real damage source. And the Knight-Judicator is a real shooting hammer. He is direct competition for the Longstrikes, but he has that hero keyword. And that hero keyword gives him a couple advantages. First off, he gets guarded hero, which means you can't be shot unless the attacker is within 12 inches, as long as the Judicator is standing near another non-hero unit, which is very easy for Stormcast to do. We can very easily park a unit near this guy. So you have a shooting unit that can't be shot back, which is very, very strong. That's a very strong effect.
Yeah, and also thinking in the new rules, in the new seasonal rules, this guy can turn off or can turn on, the obscuring skills in the place of power. So since he is also since he's also an hero, can turn it out for another units, and you can display all your units around him, and trying to get the obscuring effects in the rest of the unit. So this is something that I would like to start to review with this hero.
Yeah, being able to use the places of power is very cool. Not just for the obscuring, like you said, but also for unbinding. This guy can banish and unbind basically for free. One of them in your army can do that, or he can try to heal your units. So if you're using 5 health cavalry or something bigger like a big dragon or storm drakes or something that you typically sit there with 5 to 10 damage before you actually die, this guy can try to heal that up, which is really, really cool. That's not something a normal unit would be able to activate.
Yeah, correct. I feel stronger in comparison in some areas in comparison with the Longstrike. I feel this unit really, really stronger than the Longstrikes.
It does feel stronger because, as we'll see later in this video, in terms of damage output, they're basically the same unit point for point. So let's directly compare the Judicator to the Longstrikes, because I think this is a really fair comparison. If people use Longstrikes, if you like using Longstrikes, and you should, they're a great unit. But what we want to present to you is an alternative to Longstrikes. So, for example, if you don't want to buy a bunch of old Stormcast style models, I know a lot of people are going to really appreciate that you can buy new armor, which is not going to be squatted at some point in the future. So just looking at the numbers here, they're such a similar unit. The cost is kind of, I would say that's in favor of the Judicator. Being lower cost is inherently better because you can just bring more of them. Right now in this season, there's not really a downside to having more regiments. In fact, I would argue having more regiments is a good thing because you get access to that priority reroll if you have more regiments than your opponent, which is very, very strong. But in terms of range, health, their movement, the Longstrikes can use the Vanguard Chamber move to run and shoot, but I find that when I'm using Longstrikes, I'm usually using Paladors as well. And the Paladors are the unit that want to get that run and shoot and charge almost every single time. So it is an option for the Longstrikes, but it's not every time. Like sometimes you're going to use it.
Yeah, correct. In fact, this is the only limitation that I have found running Longstrikes when are using with the Vanguard caps is they are so limited in, as you have said, in the usage of the Vanguard skills. So, but right now I feel that the Knight-Judicator doesn't need to run and shoot. For sure, could be good, but this is offering another kind of skill that is replacing this another skill to run and charge to run and shoot. So there are another skills that make it better in other cases. But yeah, in comparison, I see it really, really a complete unit and strong.
Mm-hmm. So taking a look at some pros, because I don't want to say Longstrikes are a bad unit. They still have some stuff going for them. Even if Judicators are an excellent choice, there's still reasons to use Longstrikes. For example, they have anti-hero, which is very good against hero monsters, which there are still a ton of hero monsters in the game. So even though obscuring makes a lot of things harder to shoot, monsters are still very shootable, and most of the good units in the game, you think Rodigus, you think, well, not Bellicor, I suppose, he's ethereal, but, Krondys, people love using the big dragons, people love using big monsters. They're really strong, typically, and anti-hero is very relevant against them. If you want to keep your drops low, Longstrikes are much better for that, because every Judicator you bring is effectively increasing your drops by 1. And, of course, they can use the Vanguard Chamber ability, and they have the keyword, which means they can activate the Thunderhead Host, which is, I think, going to be our strongest sub-faction this season.
But talking about the high drops, I see in this season that we are not being punished like in the last season. So to get some Knight-Judicators or bring it into your list is not bad. I see in this season that we have more advantages than in comparison with the last one. It's offering another kind of situation, but in this season, I don't see it so hard to come with high numbers of drops.
Yeah, it almost seems like we're encouraged to run more drops. Having more drops already gives you the advantage of knowing exactly where your opponent is deploying. And for some armies, that is less of an advantage. But for Stormcast, that is a big advantage because we have reserves, we have teleports, we have shooting, we have really high threat range cavalry, like 12-inch flying moves usually. We have some 3d6, like when we know where the opponent is going, we can get the perfect deployment. And then on top of that, if you have more regiments, well, now you can also reroll priority roll once per game and really try to deny an enemy from getting a double. So more drops.
Yeah.
I think more drops is a good thing right now. So there's still some downsides to Longstrikes that the Knight-Judicator doesn't have. For example, the Longstrikes are very fragile, and although the Judicator is also fragile, they're both 6 health, the Longstrikes are especially fragile because they lose damage as they lose health. If you take 2 mortal wounds off a D3 mortal wound, or you retreat and you take D3 mortal wounds, you're losing potentially 1/3 to 2/3 of all of your output, which is a big deal. The Knight-Judicator just sits there until he takes 6 whole damage. He sits there shooting at full strength the whole time, which is really, really nice. And I would say the biggest problem with Longstrikes is that you have to take a hero that can bring Longstrikes, which is usually, I think the cheapest one is the Lord Aquilor. He's 150. And then the next cheapest is something like Tornus, who's 170. So I think Judicators are just much easier to bring in a list, and they're not a perfect unit by any means. They are also fragile. Their volume is not very good. 9 max damage for 130 points. It's just not great. But it seems like Stormcast just don't have any high volume shooting options. We don't have anything like crossbow Judicators or castigators anymore, which were a higher volume of fire. I guess we have Hurricane Raptors, but we'll talk about them in the review. And Hurricane Raptors they have a lot of problems. They're not a really usable unit. Another 2 big problems with the Knight-Judicator is that he doesn't activate the Thunderhead Host bonus for melee units to give him +1 hit, and he can't be revived, which is very important because Longstrikes being brought back with Heaven Sent is a pretty big reason to use them over a hero unit that can't be brought back.
Yeah, that's a problem. That will become a problem, but I suppose that in the meantime that you are using probably you can add some enhancement to the Knight-Judicator. Could be balancing this kind of lack of skills in your list. But I see that it's a big problem if you are not adding more enhancement. To don't return to Knight-Judicator will be a problem. You are losing the power of your shooting, and because along as the game is moving to the end.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
It's nice to be able to resurrect the shooting unit because it can shoot immediately. But there could just be other things in your list that you want to resurrect with Heaven Sent, like for example, Prosecutors or Tempestors or Quester, Soulsworn are a pretty good unit to resurrect because they can drop down somewhere and then teleport somewhere else. And I think one thing that's going to offset the Judicator is that he's not being shot, right? Like, unlike the Longstrikes, which are very weak to other shooting units, the Knight-Judicator gets guarded hero, so he just won't be getting shot nearly as often as the Longstrikes do. So maybe you won't even need to revive him.
Yeah, correct. Well, but going into the deep into the war rules, also I think the counting with the hunting hounds ability is offering more reliability during the shooting. So I suppose there are some skills that we need to be acquainted to use during the games, and I see a really good alternative for shooting attacks. The people that is acquainted to use in their list shootings and to feel covered in that section of the game, I suppose that could take 1, 2, or 3 drops with Knight-Judicator, adding also more units in their regiments, and start to feeling to the Knight-Judicator could opening another skills in your list. So I suppose it's a matter of time in order to be acquainted with this new unit as a shooting for your list.
Yeah, it's going to take some time for people to, they're very used to playing Longstrikes at both good and bad, and it'll take some time to unlearn that and learn how to use a different shooting unit. Now here, obviously at the Stormkeep, we were using castigators for the last 6 months, so I think we're going to be just fine, but other people may take some time to catch up.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so the most important thing, obviously, when you're picking a shooting unit is the damage output, and none of the other stuff we mentioned would matter if Judicators didn't actually do good damage. But as you can see, for basically the same price, right? 6 Longstrikes versus 3 Judicators, 400 points versus 390 points. they're almost identical in terms of damage output, right? Their expected damage is almost the same. Now, this chart here does assume you get +1 hit, so either you're using all-out attack or you're getting +1 hit from another source, like Vigilors can give you +1 hit, for example. It's pretty fair to assume that shooting units will be getting +1 hit. But the point of this isn't to say this is how much damage the unit's going to do. The point of this is to show just how similar their damage is, right? And this does assume, by the way, that one of the Judicators has used Hunting Hound to get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. I suppose you could also split the 6 Longstrikes into 2 units of 3 and get an extra shot with the champion, but their damage is almost the same. That's really the point. And it's almost the same per point as well, because they cost almost the same amount, 400 points versus 390. The Knight-Judicator has a slight edge in efficiency, but I don't think it'll ever come up in a game like this. That's well within the margin of error. You know, this is like a dice roll away. So good damage output. Obviously, Knight-Judicator is keeping up with Longstrikes, and that's where the rest of this whole video came from, is that his damage is actually good. So it's like, oh, well, if the damage is good, what else is he doing that we like?
Yeah, correct. I suppose that the people is not acquainted to see or to review this data from the Knight-Judicator, but in comparison, once you are seeing the benefits to using in the powerful shooting that he is offering, I suppose the people is getting more interest to include it in their list.
Yep. I think math really helps a lot of people rationalize their decisions when it comes to list building. And speaking of which, let's take a look at a couple lists that we've put together using Knight-Judicators. And I don't think these lists would really be as good as they are if you didn't have the Knight-Judicator. So this first one here is called Drake and Judy, because it's got Storm Drakes and Judicators. And it's running Vandus Hammerhand, which is a hero you probably haven't seen this edition. But he is very cheap, and he can bring Storm Drake Guard in his regiment. And he can also give Warrior Chamber units access to a +1 hit buff. So, for example, the Equestria Soulsworn, the 2 units of Shield Annihilators, the 3 Stormstrike Palladors, all of these units can be buffed by Vandus Hammerhand. And because Vandus can't bring Longstrikes, and you'll notice we have here a Knight Arcanum and a Knight Relictor, none of these heroes can bring Longstrikes. But what we can do is bring 2 Knight-Judicators instead. And you can drop them on different sides of the board or drop them together and shoot the same target. And when you combine that with the Storm Drake shooting, it is actually really significant damage output. It hurts. It's a lot of Ren 2 shooting, that's for sure. And this wouldn't be possible if you didn't have the Knight-Judicators here. If you wanted to use Longstrikes instead, you could swap Vandus for Tornus, the Redeemer, but his War Scroll just does nothing unless you have Ruination units that you can rally. So the Knight-Judicators here are providing a very valuable service by allowing you to use a better hero, well, better for this list anyway, in Vandus Hammerhand. This list would not be possible without Knight-Judicators.
Yeah, correct. I see a strong reason to include Knight-Judicators instead of Longstrikes. And this is one benefit that I see that people is going to be using in the future in order to replace to the Longstrikes. Yeah, it's really powerful. This list shows a really good mixture between the Warrior Chamber and the Unknown Dragons. Sorry,
yeah.
I forgot
the Extremist Chamber. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another important point. Whenever you run Storm Drake Guard, you really want to run the Lightning Echelon subfaction, because there's a very cool trick you can do with Storm Drakes that we'll talk about on a future episode, where you can try to get their Rampage, and if that's on a 3+, and you can use their Rampage to leave combat temporarily until you're ready to attack. But having the Lightning Echelon as a backup for that, to say, oh, well, I failed my Rampage. Okay, well, now I have a 3+ to gain Strike First. And that's a very, very useful tool, because you just want to avoid taking as much damage as possible on your Storm Drakes. Now, the problem with that is if you're running Lightning Echelon, you can't run Thunderhead Host, which this list would really, really like to do. Because you'll notice there's a unit of Equestria Soulsworn, 2 units of Annihilators, and a unit of Stormstrike Palladors, and all of those units would like to get +1 hit when they're fighting around the Storm Drakes. But they can't get it because you really want the Lightning Echelon. So Vandus comes in and still gives you that +1 hit buff, which helps make everything run a lot smoother. So again, this is a very specific thing that only Knight-Judicators can do. If you didn't have the Knight-Judicators in here, you couldn't run Vandus, and then you might want to run Thunderhead Host, then you might lose that Strike First effect on the Storm Drakes. So all of these little micro decisions are adding up.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
And here's another list. This one's also using Extremist Chamber units. This one in particular is using the Lord Celestant on Dracoth, who has the Quicksilver Draft. And he is going to try to combo that with 4 Concussors and strike first when the enemy charges into them. So you drop them into play, and you drop the Celestant into play, you drop the Dracoths around him, and then you have a very powerful fight first block that disables commands, wounds on 2s, and does a lot of mortal wounds when your opponent charges in. Now, the problem I always had with this concept is that it was tough to bring a shooting unit. And in the last season, I was bringing regular Judicators, but they are no longer legal. They have been moved to Legends. So instead, I've decided, well, I can put in some Knight-Judicators. And again, now I have a shooting core, I have my Concussor Strike First block, I have 2 units of Questor Soulsworn to play the flanks. This list runs buttery smooth now because of the Knight-Judicators. And this is 5 drops, so I don't mind if I am forced to go first. I can reroll priority once per game and use that as a tool to threaten my opponent all game long.
Yeah, on fields, as you have said, the powerful Quicksilver Drought ability triggering the concursors, fighting after the Lord Celestant, and then also if they get stuck still, you can target them with the Judicators and release into for the next phase of combat. So I see really nice mixture between the skills from Judicator and the rest of the list. So I suppose that this list is really, really good. I will try it. I will try it.
Do it. It's fun. The Strike First combo is very fun, especially when you drop the unit onto an objective that the Judicators have made obscured, and now your opponent has to charge in if they want to deal with that unit, and that unit gets to hit first, and that unit hits very well. So it's a really hard thing to get. It's like a soft check on your opponent. You know, they have to massively overcommit resources to the middle of the board.
Yeah, I even thinking there to leave one Knight-Judicator in reserves. And then after the Lord Celestant and the concursors advancing to the middle of the field, leaving fall to Knight-Judicator in the next turn, turning on the obscuring and allowing to the rest of the foot heroes or foot units to advance into the needs obscuring and to take advantage of the center of the field. So it's opening a new kind of game style for the rest of the units. I see it stronger, believe me. I see this as a good skill.
Yeah, the Knight-Judicator feels really good. I will caution everyone at this point that we have no idea what's going to happen with the next season's rules. It is very possible Games Workshop will maybe anything can happen. They could nerf the Knight-Judicator. They could make having fewer drops matter again. But everything we've seen so far indicates that they want more drops to be a viable alternative to fewer drops. They don't like the everyone race to 1 drop metagame that has been developed for the last 2 editions. So it seems like Knight-Judicators are a good thing to purchase. And if you want a strong shooting core and you don't want to buy Longstrikes, or maybe you're just tired of using them and you want to change a pace, then we at the Stormkeep highly recommend the Knight-Judicator. He is a fantastic unit for this season. Thanks everybody for watching, especially to our Patreon supporters and YouTube members. If you think I missed anything here or our analysis is lacking in some way, leave a comment down below the video. If you want to talk about AOS, join the Stormkeep Discord server. We have a cool new fancy, unique name for our Discord server. It's discord.gg/Stormkeep. And thanks to our community for boosting the server so that we can have that. We have an active battle reports forum where many people post their battle reports, long form detail going into their thoughts about every turn, about every action, about every decision they're making. We have beautifully painted models. In fact, right now there's a painting Ruination hero contest going on. So if you have a Ruination Chamber hero that you have painted and you want a chance to win some fabulous prizes from our sponsor, then feel free to jump in there and post your model. We also do list building for all armies, not just for Stormcast Eternals. Although we are focused on Stormcast, that's the uniting bond between all of us here. We do talk about all armies. I play Flesh Eater Courts, Seraphon, Fire Slayers. We have a variety of armies within the team, so we're always doing list building for all of them. And consider supporting the gang by becoming a member on YouTube or Patreon at patreon.com/thestormkeep. All right, and that'll do it from us. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Luis, for coming on. Hopefully we'll see you more on the Stormkeep in the future.
Thank you very much. Bye.